Hi everyone, I'm Alon Lits, the CEO of October Health. I'm really excited today to have Zani Mashinini with me. She's the VP of Talent and Culture at Walmart. Obviously a name that everyone knows. Really excited to have you with us. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Alon. It's good to be here, actually.
Yeah, thanks for making the time. So what I always like to start these conversations is just giving our listeners a bit of context around how did you end up as the VP of Talent and Culture and a lot of other responsibilities at Walmart?
Yeah. Fascinating times, I must say, for my career. My career started many, many years ago. My mom was in human resources industry, so I was fortunate in that she was working at Anglo, and got to be surrounded by her peers, colleagues back then who were experts in different aspects of HR. And at that time, industrial psychology was also quite an important factor or profession. So I remember having the opportunity to get assessed and to kind of understand which career I should actually pursue. And I was told I could either do law or marketing and this personnel airspace, and I thought, okay, well, easy. My mom is in it. She was personnel those days. So that's what I did. I studied social sciences at Rhodes University and focused on industrial psychology back then.
Okay.
And then did my honors in it as well. So psychology, social science, all of that. And then I balanced my career by studying business. So I did a master's in management and focused on executive coaching with Wits Business School. And then because of my global sort of more passion for looking at things globally, I studied through the University of Liverpool.
Oh, wow, okay.
By the way, I'm a Liverpool fan.
Why say that?
I just had to get... Yeah, I'm hoping for good season. Good friendly, so far, or pre-season rather. So I studied a postgraduate in global human resources.
Okay.
And obviously that was also inspired by my time in the UK. So I've really gone through the spectrum of HR over the years, getting close to 25 years or so.
Sure. So it's an amazing run, and I think you've worked with some of, South Africa, now global leading brands, I know SAP, TFG, now Walmart. How maybe just to kind of set the scene and start talking a bit about, culture, what makes culture, what, creates a culture that is high performing, that leads to retention. What are some of those secret ingredients? I mean, those are some of our leading brands that do make companies special.
I think working in a space where you are responsible for supporting an organization with defining culture, making sure the culture enables the strategy. It's a very, very challenging space, I must be honest. Never imagined myself having to work in a space like this. But one thing I can tell you is culture does not live on the walls. So yes, you need symbols. Symbols are very important for culture, but they don't make the culture. So yes, you do need to make people see what you want them to believe and live by. What I've seen is that the companies who do it well, so I can name a couple, but those that do it well, they love it. So it's how they speak. It's the language that is used often. It's very deliberate. The leaders are intentional. When they are on platforms engaging their people, their teams, it's thought through. There's clarity, there's consistency, there's purpose that is heard, seen, believed, and there's alignment of leaders. So the leaders live the culture. They demonstrate the culture to you, and people follow it. And that's, I think, how the best people have done it. And then they make sure that people understand it. And there's this fascination. I think we love storytelling. I've never seen storytelling done so well as I'm seeing it now, is to see a leader stand up and actually connect with their teams and audiences and get people to listen. every time I hear one of the leaders where I work I remember what they said. And I walk away and I remember, I'll write nuggets. And I love LinkedIn as a tool because you can teach others and learn from others through LinkedIn. So I often find, oh, I just heard this from our chief people officer. I'm going to post it because I found it fascinating. I'm sure somebody else will. And it's helped me get clarity in some of these difficult topics or whatever. So the best companies are doing it through their leaders. Not only do they articulate it well by saying, this is what I expect from you as a leader. This is what I expect from you as an associate of our organization. This is how we'll measure you. This is how I'll hold you accountable to it. But this is also how I support you. So where I'm working now, you're seeing all of that come through. You're seeing the leadership programs on LinkedIn. They're delivered by the CEO himself and his C-suite. So that to me is fascinating. And that for me is how culture comes alive. I think if you leave it on the walls and you leave it in the handbook and you leave it on the PowerPoint slide, I don't know if you'll achieve what you intend to achieve with that.
So, I mean, obviously Walmart, I think, is probably one of the largest employers in the world.
Sure.
If you just think about the Africa business, it's, one of the largest employers on the continent as well. And, I mean, to your point, culture starts with leadership. I think just the point that, to steal a nugget from you, I think, culture enables strategy, right? You can have the best strategy, but if you don't have a culture to support that, your strategy is going to fall flat, right? And you won't be able to execute. But how do you, disseminate culture across an organization the size of Walmart, the size of, the old national group?
Yeah, I think firstly it's got to be clear. That's the first thing. It starts with strategy. So your strategy has got to be clear, because if your strategy cannot be articulated by anybody. So we had a fascinating experience or exercise where we were tasked to articulate the strategy. All levels of leadership should be able to tell what the strategy would tell their teams with conviction around our purpose, where we want to be, where we want to play, why we want to do it. And as I said, with purpose. And I think for me, what I'm learning is if it doesn't start with a clear strategy that is linked to purpose and that is consistent, and then there's alignment on that strategy. And as I said, it's got to be clear and it's got to be about inspiring teams to want to also deliver that strategy. Once the strategy is clear, the counter conversation is much easier, because then you define, okay, let's say the strategy is about winning, being the bigger player in a particular market. Then it's about a culture that inspires winning and where you want to win. And what's winning? Well, I've got to want to win firstly. So am I the person who should be there? So I think when you build cultures, you're going to have to talk about the people that you want in your culture. I think one organization did it very well. They were able to have blueprints around the people that they wanted. And you knew the person that could fit in this organization. I always say to people, yes, there's diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also there's cultures in organizations. And you have to find the combination. So am I the best person to be in that culture? And the culture that is built in that organization, we've also defined who are the best people for that. Not all of us can work for the same couple, and the companies cannot attract the same people. Companies have to be very clear around who are the people that are actually going to help us make this culture, live this, or people live this culture, make this culture enable, or will it enable strategy, for example. So I think clarity in the strategy, having purpose around the strategy, and then defining the culture around, well, this is what it means. We want people who are like this. These are the values we want. Then your values link to your strategy, so you can then articulate the values. And even if it's the values you've heard, excellence, respect, all of those, even if they are values that sound the same as other, but they feel different. And that's what culture is about. People have got to feel it. So when you talk about respecting the individual, you've got to be confident that that's what you do every day. So I think the values are important, and I think articulating what your leadership brand should look like. what do you want your leaders to do? What should they be doing every day? What should they be obsessed with? What should they be passionate? What should they role model? And if you don't do that, I think it's anything. Every man will define the culture. The culture could be that.
Interpretation.
Yeah, exactly. People will create their own culture. Or you could have microcosms, or you could have subsets. But what you want is alignment. Yes, you want people to be unique. That's why they are individuals. They're human in the end. So you get the uniqueness because we're all human. However, people want that alignment. They want shared mindset, shared purpose. They want to know I'm coming to deliver this, and there's the, true north for us. And when you give people a GPS and it works, they get excited to come to it. That's what you want to.
But I love that. I think, you can share so much, and it's also valuable. But I think this point around helping an individual understand what their North Star is and how they fit into the broader organization is such a critical piece, because if you feel like there's misalignment or there's no purpose, as you said, to what I'm doing, regardless of what it is, then it's very difficult to build that culture and build that excitement in the organization.
Absolutely. I mean, one fascinating story for me was a colleague who started a social media trend. He's actually trained it.
Oh, wow.
And he's had even, I think, 1 million views.
Oh, wow.
And he was just videoing himself in the office, singing and dancing. And now there's this whole trend about him. And for me, that's what it's about. And now he's doing it as part of his day job. And I think that
become a brand ambassador.
Yeah, 100%. And I think culture is also about influences. So when we talk about culture champions, we talk about championing the culture. I think what it is finding the people who would love to also help you build the culture, and grab those people, and they'll come up with their own ideas of how, as long as you've given them that GPS, the rest they'll come up.
And it's authentic, right?
And it's a thing. And
you could probably never pay for that type
that's
of
right,
exposure.
100%. And I find that quite important with culture is also allow people to be part of it. Let them build it with you. You give them direction, and they can figure out the detail. They will. And that's why you hire a certain type of person for your organization that can also bring their mind to it, their brains at work, all of that. And I think the other thing about culture is you've got to then be able to measure it. Accountability is important, and I think the environments where that accountability is so clear that people know if you've not demonstrated the values, this is what is the consequence. And I think
the what and the how people do it.
Absolutely. 100%. And if you're not doing it the way that helps us build a culture that enables our strategy, then your culture, you're actually eroding the strategy. You're helping us not to achieve it.
I think that, again, so much to unpack there. And I really we could spend the whole podcast speaking about culture. There is an important piece that I do want to touch on. And that piece is, you're obviously, originally a South African business that's now part of, this large global organization with an American headquarters. So, how do you adapt the culture, right? Because obviously post-acquisition, and I know it's not a very recent acquisition, but it's a massive organization, it takes time. How have you adjusted or adapted culture to, still kind of retain some of its roots, but also become part of that global art?
Yeah, I think cultures transitioning into other cultures or building new cultures to respond to new strategies, whatever the case may be. So I'm tempted to answer this as an HR professional. So the first thing I've learned is that you have to decide as an HR professional whether you love working in environments that are going through change. Because some people see change as a threat. They see it as turmoil. They see it as a mess. They see it as, oh my gosh.
The only certainty.
Exactly. And for me, I kind of look for that in my career. I've transitioned many times because that is my niche. I'm a person who likes transformation. I like to see evolution, and I'd like to see quick evolution as well. And I'd like to see, get my hands dirty and mobilize teams to want to get things to a different level. And so for me, it's been fascinating seeing the transition from one culture to another. But I think what's helpful and encouraging is that you're going into success and it's not about going into darkness, doom. It's great to go through a transition that's positive as opposed to negative. However, I do understand that change requires a lot of resilience, and I think people have to equip themselves with strategies around resilience. Back in the day, we used to do resilience training. We loved throwing the word around, but I think resilience is something we shouldn't underestimate. It's a skill you need for today and tomorrow. If not, if you haven't shaped it by now, you've got to be able to find ways to see the magic in storms. Storms are not always doom and gloom. Obviously, I'm not being literal, but what I mean is there's always, what is it? I never waste a crisis. I believe in that. If you look at the Great Depression, a lot of things came out, good things came out of there in terms of people's creativity, coming up with things that have not been done before. So I'm sort of inclined to look at things from that perspective when there's changes. So that comes with excitement, but also learning, fascination, overwhelm, and inspiration as well, because you get to see how people do it better than you. And whenever you see people do it better than you, it just makes it all worthwhile, because every day you're learning. Every day it's different. You don't know what to expect from a week. But when you look back, you go, I cannot believe what I've been able to overcome. And the stories I'm able to tell, as I said earlier, I feel like a little girl sometimes telling with fascination, telling about an organization that's able to celebrate and challenge, that's able to inspire, and that's able to create great strategies that can shape culture. And that for me is one of the deep, if not only, companies.
But I think, like, something I love about what you've said is, like, so much at an individual level is about mindset.
Yeah.
Right. And how you approach these things, because you can be confronted with the same situation but have a negative mindset going into it, and your experience through that or your learnings from that will be very different.
100%. And that's the resilient mindset. Is going to be one of the things that you have to, can I say, fix. So if you're negative, it's a big alarm bell for you to start there. You've got to find things that help you see things differently. And that also equips you. So do scenario planning. Team scientist scenario planning tools are fantastic, and learning the flags, painting the scenarios. What's the worst case? I think part of resilience or developing resilience is starting, what's the worst case? And then you workshop the worst case for yourself, because worst case for me is different. Worst case for you, work back with. Then you start saying, okay, if it's this scenario, this is what I'm going to do. If it's that scenario, this is good. How do I know which scenario is playing out? Well, I look for the flags. Okay, that flag, that person's leaving, that one's coming. Oh, that one is stopped, and those things.
So it's preparation as well, right?
100% preparation is important. Don't leave things to chance. Leave a little to chance, because there's only so much you can influence about the future, but a lot lives in you. And I think that's great, because it means you can control it, and then you can plan for it and, prepare for it, as I said.
Awesome. So again, we could keep on culture, but because your portfolio is so broad, there's some other aspects I want to touch on. And I know something within your portfolio is really focused on, obviously, retention.
Yeah.
Right. So culture is a big part about what keeps people within organizations. Yeah. But what, in your experience, have been some of your most successful interventions or your kind of go-to strategies within companies to retain top talent?
I always look at retention and I go, okay, what do we want to achieve? Do we really want everybody to be with us forever? Is that what is retention? Is it mapped to skills? Is it mapped to strategy? Some organizations have gone to the point of saying, I'll restrain you for 3 years because I need your skills for 3 years. What you do after 3 years is up to you. Or it's about, no, we want loyalty. We really want people to feel like this is a place where they belong, where they see themselves. And so you'll find organizations where people talk about 20 years, 10 years, 35 years, all of that. I think what sits at the heart of retention is motivation. And motivation is got to be about you understanding the person. what motivates a person. I always say the worst you can do is throw generic plans at retention and say, no, all leaders get to go to Harvard once a year. Well, if I'm a new mom and I've just given birth, the last thing I would do is go to Harvard, So for me, I just want the Friday off. Or can I work from home for 3 months, 6 months? Can I take sabbatical? So I think if you're building retention strategies as an HR professional, I think build models around what motivates people, what are those factors, and probably have a framework around that. These are the broad factors that drive motivation, and then give leaders tools to assess that. So what conversation can I have with my team around motivation? But sometimes it's not a conversation, it's just getting to know them. Could be, how was your weekend? Then you hear, kind of course with my kids, my family, I was cooking, and, went away, and we thought we were planning. So then you get to know, okay, this person's big on family. And if they're big on family, they'll appreciate the afternoon off. They'll appreciate the flexibility. They'll appreciate the benefit where they get to sponsor their sons or daughters' education. Then you're starting to talk about engagement, and you're talking about retention. So I find the work around UVP is very important because it helps articulate what a company stands for when it comes to what we offer. We will always talk about propositions because you have to stand for something as an organization in terms of what's the deal for you when you work for it. This is the deal I pick you. I'll give you these types of rewards. I'll give you this type of flexibility. I'll give you this kind of development. I'll give you this type of career ability. That's your proposition. And then the people must plug at it. For me, it is about mobility. Don't make me sit in my role longer than 18 months. You have to find a way to use me in the organization. But when I am fulfilling my role, I'm doing the best. And that's the trade, that's the deal, And I think if we can look at retention that way, I think then it's going to make sense for everyone.
It's about personalization.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Out of that, I think like that one size fits all, doesn't work anymore. Maybe that was the case previously, but I think organizations that we see that are thriving are offering personalized retention strategies.
It's funny, I just researched, I read an article just before our session, and it was talking about well-being and which well-being programs don't work. The typical corporate employee assistance program, they call them that. And they were talking about family dinners as being the most beneficial, the most engaging tools to actually retain employees, because people are valuing family more. I think gone are the days where people are putting their employer before their families and themselves. I think we've seen that industrial sort of shifts between the different revolutions. In this current revolution, people are going, I actually would rather go pick up my son at 4:00. Yes, if there's something due, I'm not going to, neglect the work I have to deliver. But right now, I need to go pick my son.
It's about like that high trust, that flexibility, right?
And
to give people the ability to, I guess, integrate, right? It's not.
That's what it is. Yeah, people are doing that more and more. And I think that's why when you look at hybrid ways of working, that is a key tool. But I think the tool there is about flexibility. I don't think it's about whether you work from home or not. And I think also I don't think we should look at it that way. I think we should look at flexibility, because then it looks different for everyone. I love going to the office every day, so I do it every day. But I do value the flexibility. So there are occasions where I would have to tend to family, and I would expect that should be fun, because I will give any hour to my work. And I think if you look at things in that perspective, it becomes a lot easier to achieve things like retention and everything else goes with it.
I think that's a critical element. I think people are not going to give their everything for an organization where they don't feel valued or trusted, right? And that's a big part of it, that flexibility that comes with the tech. I know another big part of your portfolio and your experience has been on learning and development. And, I think that means different things to different people through their career. And obviously, for an organization the size of Massmart, Walmart, not easy, right? Especially, I mean, you've got a massive workforce to start off. You've got very diverse skill sets, diverse roles, diverse levels of employee across the organization. How do you think about tackling L&D across the organization?
Yeah. If I look at different industries, and I've seen also different partners that are in the space of L&D, whether it's leadership development or whether it's offering digital solutions. Again, if L&D is not enabling your strategy, then I think you'll never get the ROI. We always talk about return on investment. How do we measure effectiveness of training solutions? For me, it's got to start with, well, what's the business strategy? Is it about customer focus? Retailers are big on that these days. I think many years a retailer I once worked for, the CEO was very clear. He said, Zani, you can do anything you want. If it's not about customer, then I'm not interested. Don't come and talk to me about anything else but customer. So that's what we did. We looked at our budgets. Our budget was majority of it aligned to customer. If there's anything to do with customer, you got the money. Then we looked at what are the outcomes we want to, what do we want to see people do differently? So we defined all of that, whether it's in the store, out the store, and wherever the case may be. And I think defining all those capabilities that you want to deliver the strategy makes the L&D work much better, because the L&D is there is not a benefit, it's not a right. It then becomes, again, I get to grow in the company because A, I'm being equipped to contribute, and then I contribute. So it should actually give the impact. And I think if your L&D strategies are not looking at impact, then you've got to ask yourself, why are you doing it? And what's fascinating about L&D these days, it can happen anyhow, anyway. You could do all sorts of things with L&D. So it was fascinating space, I thought, because of what technology has been allowed us to do. I'm fascinated by why I find animation fascinating. So I'm always looking for creative ways to tell or teach a subject, get people to grow their life skills and eventually their competencies. So it's a fascinating space to be. And I think it requires a lot of creativity. So I love gamification. So I do a lot of gamification because I always look at what stimulates human beings. Like people love to thrive in competition. They love to actually bring, people love to win. That's why we play games at home. That's why people still buy games. 30 seconds is such a famous, tool. So I borrow in those kinds of...
That's the way for a company that's on the card as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, L&D has taught me how possible it is in an HR world to contribute to strategy.
So I love everything that you talk about comes back to Alon.
Yeah.
Whether it's culture, whether it's L&D, your retention strategy, it needs to align to the bigger picture. None of these pieces live in isolation, and it's all part of that bigger picture. It's important that they're working together to achieve that overall objective. The other point that I just want to unpack and touch on is your point around measuring ROI, because I think one of the difficulties with HR traditionally is that it's not always easy to measure ROI. So how do you go about measuring ROI, whether it's in the context of L&D, in broader culture initiatives? How do you measure that impact that you're driving? It's not as easy as there's a sales strategy. Either sales go up or they go down, right? Very, very easy to measure, especially in that retail environment. But those people metrics are not always that easy to measure. So we'd love to learn how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I've led probably a few academies because I think academies help structure the L&D a little bit better. I learned that from you with in the UK. I was fortunate that I got to work for one of the academies back then, and they exposed me to how you build an academy, and they exposed me in terms of all the blueprint of building an academy and also how you measure it. What I learned from them is that if you've not taken the strategy and broken it down into capabilities, you won't be able to measure the intervention. So I remember leading a team in one of the academies that I led, and they were fascinated by the ROI conversation because I got obsessed by it because we're doing many, many things as we do and they do. And, the board, the senior executive was starting to ask, well, where's the benefit? We hear you, we're spending the money, where's it really going? Because they're always cutting budgets. And in this instances, we were able to actually triple the budget because we demonstrated the ROI. So what we did is we defined the capabilities. That's how ROI starts. If you cannot tell them what you want to achieve with customer service training, I can't measure what that training should deliver. So yes, we always have outcomes for training, and then we never test the outcomes. We say, if you attend this training, you will be able to do the following, or from here are the 5 objectives of this workshop, or whatever the intervention. I always go to the team, well, go back to the promise you said to people. If you spend 5 days doing this, at the end of 5 days, you'll be able to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, go check. And it's as simple as that. So if you said you'll increase sales, did we increase sales? If you said you'll be a better leader, well, go check. Are they? Ask the people. Is Alon a better leader because he's done his leadership program? And so I think if you can make it that simple, then building the tools for it is easy. So are you building questionnaires? Are you going to check focus group, do focus group to check? Are you doing mystery shopping in retail? We said we're measuring customer service, so in net promoter scores, go check the net promoter score. I always say to my team, if you're going to train teams on customer service, I want to see the customer service scores. I want to see what customers are saying after your training. And I know people like to debate it, but you look at multiple data points, right? If you don't believe that it's a result of this training, then do assessment before and after. Use tools, other tools to help you measure. Cross-check it with other data points. Don't choose one. And I think very quickly you'll be able to see that your data is telling you that these interventions are working. What we've learned with ROI, you've got to be mindful of the environment as well. So have a look what else is going on in that environment. So you could intervene with training, but it may be another intervention that's required. So you have to be careful when you do ROI that you're not oblivious to what's happening, or you're not studying what's happening over and above training, because culture could be wrong in that environment. It will train and nothing happens.
Not going to need to design.
Yeah, they're not going to need to it. So training, yes, can be very impactful, but it also lives within a context. So you've got to understand the context when you do it.
None of that context has to be right. So it goes back to where we started around the culture.
Yeah. You can have worse leaders, bad behaviors, and every week people are pulled into a classroom and they're sitting there going, you can look this before, and they go back to do the things they normally do and don't actually adopt anything that's come out of that training.
I think, again, it goes back to where you started around authenticity. Right, where you said, what makes the organization special for you today is that authenticity that shines through from, the most senior leader within the organization. And that then hopefully filters through to everyone else.
100%.
Maybe just in closing, I think that's obviously the ideal that organizations thrive towards, right? Driving that authenticity and making sure there is that consistency. Like what are some of the things that organizations can do to, address their own behaviors to ensure that, the right behaviors are celebrated and those people grow. And if there are wrong behaviors, those are dealt with. How is that dealt with at an organizational level?
Yeah. So those who do it well communicate expectations very clearly. And I think if you get that right, so there are two companies that come to mind, both of them articulated what they expect from people, their leaders, and they were very good at saying, here's what will help you. So the support was there, and then they built accountability in different ways. So there was positive reinforcement and negative. So negative means obviously you get dismissed or you get whatever disciplinary tools are available. People had put it with the sort of the compliance and ethics arm to it as well, to say we will look out for the bad behaviors and make it easy for individuals to communicate things that are wrong, that people are not doing the right way. So I think putting those mechanisms in place, looking at your performance management process, how does it reinforce good behaviors? So do you measure the how, do you measure the what, etc.?
But I think the recognition piece is probably what the strongest way is to reinforce what you want to see in your culture. And it is going to be about the everyday, bringing languages where you say to somebody, I appreciate you. And I think that's what I'm learning now, is that when somebody can just look you now and say, I appreciate you, and the well done and the emails. So those things are still important. The high fives, whatever language you bring in is important. And then obviously being able to give you a platform where everybody celebrates. And people like that. We know people love the recognition ceremonies. Some people tease them or mock them, but they work. People want to know that everybody is saying on that. And I think those are the other ways that you reinforce some of the things you want to see. And I think when you're doing it differently with negative reinforcement, you've got to be consistent. So people won't buy into those tools unless they know when Zani did it and Alon did it, you're going to treat them the same in terms of they both get to be held accountable. But if you get held accountable, if I don't, that's where that goes almost. Yeah, that's people are looking for consistency and they're looking for practices that give credibility to leaders.
Awesome. So thanks so much. I think so much there. I think just to, as a lot, but like just your point of recognition and like as simple as, just looking a person in the eye and saying, I appreciate you. It's like, that's something any organization can do regardless of your budgetary constraints. Right. And it's just it's often overlooked. And I think something that we can all probably just do more of.
Yeah.
And I think so powerful. But really love the conversation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
If we sum it up, I think we chatted about a lot, starting off about culture, what makes culture special, the importance of leadership from a cultural perspective, driving that alignment across the organization at every level so people understand how their role aligns to the purpose of the organization. We've chatted about retention strategies, thinking about personalization, definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach. And then ultimately L&D and ensuring that does align to strategy. I think if there's kind of one theme that I take away from my chat today is that importance of alignment and making that critical and thinking about the HR role around the broader strategy, how that aligns to it and how that can drive the ultimate ROI for the business, because that's what HR is there for, right? It's a strategic partner where you started to enable the people to deliver on the strategy. So there's nothing more important in the organization or within the organization than the right HR person doing that. So thank you for that masterclass.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed the conversation.
Me too. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.